Ba ba boom 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 boom. Trivial Theology says stop saying this if you're an atheist. I'm gonna say whatever the bleep he said not to say because he told me not to say it. Now I have to say it all the time. What's he saying? Oh, I'm at 3 minutes 41 seconds already. Why did I skip all that? I mean, I'm gonna have to force you to listen to all that, right? No, he's just saying like all the thoughtful atheists, all the people that really study theology understand the point that he's making. So if you're saying whatever he's going to say not to say, then you're just not somebody that studied philosophy enough. So that's all he has said so far, pretty much. Okay.
Claim or use this argument. It's not really an argument, but I think you have the misunderstanding that evidence entails something being true, right? Or the evidence.
No, I understand what the word evidence means, or at least I think I do. You know, when the word evidence, I mean, we could just, let's look at the definition. I mean, the available body of facts or information indicating whether belief or proposition is true or valid. Okay, so I'm very simplistic, and the things that I consider evidence are empirical or testable in some way, shape, or form. If you don't have a way to demonstrate it, then you don't actually have evidence.
Evidence is synonymous with proof or something like that, right?
Yeah, evidence and proof or proof in the mathematical sense, or proof in like what version of proof are you going for? So evidence would lead to the proof, but you don't have evidence. That's the problem. Not any evidence at all.
I think your fear is that if you say there's evidence for God's existence, then that means God exists.
Well, there apparently is no evidence of any God's existence, as far as I have yet observed. Maybe I'm missing something. It's quite possible, but no person has presented me with empirical evidence or a repeatable test for the phenomenon labeled God. On top of that, because some people complain that those things are too restrictive, no one has provided a sound argument for any gods so far. Now, again, I'm limited to what I have read and observed, but within my, observation thus far, I have yet to see any sound argument for God. I have no empirical evidence, no repeatable test for God. So, therefore, saying there's no evidence of God seems warranted.
But that's just to misunderstand how evidence works.
Nope.
And we'll come back to this idea of how it specifically relates to God in this discussion. But
yeah, no. Here's how evidence works, whether you like it or not. Those books behind you on the shelf are really there, and I have ample evidence that they're really there. And you could take them off and read them. You could show me them on camera. We can test those books. We can verify that they are real books. We don't need some long, convoluted argument about what evidence is or isn't to confirm that those books exist. That light that's behind you to your left is extraordinarily bright. We don't need evidence of that. We don't need. We have evidence of that. I misspoke. We don't need evidence of that. No, we don't need evidence. Yeah, no, we just believe it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah, we just believe the light's there without any. We know that light's there. We have no reason to doubt that light is there. So we have ample evidence of that light. Now, can you provide any sort of evidence even close to that for the thing God or not?
Just to quickly show a sort of real world practical example that we can all sort of agree on. Just imagine a court trial, right?
The court trial. Yes. Let's imagine a court trial. Okay. All right. I've offered this challenge to theists and apologists before. All right, let's set up a mock trial of God. And God is guilty of not existing. And you know, he is assumed to exist, or something like that. Or maybe he's guilty of existing. Let's say that. Because he's innocent of not existing, right? So, we could frame it however, but regardless, what are you going to bring forth for your evidence of God? Not things that you think point to God, but the God itself. And therein lies the problem. The God is definitionally proposed to be X, Y, and Z, but never demonstrated to be X, Y, and Z. All the arguments for God that exist so far that I know of assume God has certain properties and then make arguments that lead towards those properties being fulfilled by the criteria that the argument lays out. St. Augustine's arguments all pre-assume what God is at the end. They say, this is the thing we call God. The Kalam assumes what God is. All the arguments that are for God and about God assume that they know what God is. The fine-tuning argument assumes that it knows that the fine-tuning of the universe is so well-tuned for life that that's impossible by just necessity or chance with some some sort of filtering mechanism. It has to be X without demonstrating that X is even a thing. These are not evidences. These are bad arguments. What is your evidence? I don't want to go to a courtroom because God would never show up. If I call God to the stand, it's not going to get onto the stand. So if you really want to challenge God's existence in a courtroom style, fine. We'll have to get lawyers and all that, I suppose. But yeah, you're not going to do that.
You have the defendant and you have the prosecutor. Both the defense and the prosecution are going to make a case, and they're going to put forward evidence to the judge or to the jury to sort of make their case.
Well, not necessarily. They might put forth an argument and not evidence. In fact, there might not be any evidence. It might be purely speculative. It might be a he said, she said sort of situation. Depends on the court case. But this analogy fails. And someone already pointed out that this guy needs to not listen to J. Warner Wallace. In fact, I believe that was Felicia by Nature, right? Yeah, that said that. So, yeah, she's right. You need to not listen to that guy because he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Now, both sides have evidence, but both sides are not correct, right?
Well, no. You really only have evidence for the actual thing. Or you don't. So that's not you're making this extraordinarily murky because that's not how courtrooms function. So this is just a bad analogy. Not both sides don't necessarily have evidence. The prosecution might have, let's say they have, a recording of the person at the scene of the crime. And so that's pretty strong evidence that person was there. Additionally, they have the evidence that the person has a record of stealing in the past. So that lends to the possibility that this person committed this crime. So the other side might not have any evidence at all and just has to argue that, they wouldn't have done it. Have you ever been to a kangaroo court? No, not lately. I'm not hoppy enough for that. Blaster Master is, anyways.
Right? Clearly, the person can't be guilty and not guilty. They're either guilty or they're not guilty. But
Yeah, they're assumed to be innocent until proven guilty. So again, with the courtroom analogy of God, I always mix it up in my head. If we would have to propose God existing, would be innocent or guilty of existing, because it's like, yeah, but regardless of whichever way that would, I'd have to think about that. But yeah, you got nothing. You don't have any evidence. So
But that doesn't stop both sides from putting forward evidence.
yeah, but
So
you
might
you
think,
don't have any evidence to put forth.
okay, well, how can that be? And again, this is why it's not true that evidence means that something is true. All
What? No, if you have evidence of the thing, then you can demonstrate that that's true. Otherwise, you can't. If you don't have any evidence, you can never hope to show that it's true. But you don't have any evidence, so it doesn't really matter. You don't. There is no good or bad evidence. There's just what's real and not real.
evidence means is that it is a data point, you might say, that is consistent or expected on a given hypothesis. Okay.
Right. And with that, you have no data points that show that God is the actual phenomenon.
Okay, so like in the case of, I don't know, quickly, let's say we've got Bob, and he is accused of
Still on his broken analogy. I wish he would just give us evidence of God. That'd be great.
robbing a bank, and both sides are going to put forward evidence for why Bob's guilty or not guilty.
Okay, so but if we're going to go with the courtroom analogy, Bob is actually invisible, and nobody has ever seen Bob, and every description of Bob that you get from everybody that's seen Bob is wildly different from each other, and Bob's has no fingerprints and has never been photographed or taped. We've never heard audio from Bob. We have people that have written stories about Bob. You know, Blastmaster swears he was with Bob at the time. You know, but you know, if we're going to keep the analogy to what God actually is supposed to be anything like, then your Bob isn't even there in the courtroom. And so if you took God to court, you couldn't get that case heard. So usually what happens, and sometimes it does happen, people have sued God, believe it or not. And usually the court just tosses it out, or they'll say, sure, you win. Good luck collecting from God, you know, because they can't do anything. They're like, yeah, you won, or you lose, or whatever. And it's like, what are they going to do? What are you going to do? You can't collect from God. So there's, if you wanted to prove God is guilty of existence, and I want to prove he's innocent of existing, well, I don't have to, because him innocent of it, yeah, that's how it would work. Innocent of existing is assumed until guilt is proven. So what evidence are you going to bring forth? Well, you can't bring God to the stand. So where's your evidence?
The prosecution might say something like, well, Bob's car was seen.
Yeah. Okay. This analogy is broken.
In a half mile of the bank within 30 minutes of that time frame. So it's like, okay, that's evidence in favor of Bob robbing the bank. And why?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, because it's consistent with the hypothesis that Bob robbed the bank, because Bob's car would have to be.
Do you know what would be really like good? Like, yeah, if we have anyways,
within the vicinity of the bank for him to be able to rob it, right? Assuming he's driving his own car. You get my point here. But it doesn't prove that Bob robbed the bank, right? Okay, and so now maybe the defense is going to put forward this data point or this piece of evidence that Bob was wearing a green shirt that day, whereas the claims from the eyewitnesses are that the bank robber, was wearing a red shirt that they could see.
Okay, so yeah, the eyewitness testimony is not very reliable, but if we have video evidence, that would be really good.
Maybe under like a black hoodie or something. But we know we have, let's say, picture video proof that Bob was wearing a green shirt prior to that. And so how is that evidence that Bob is innocent? Well, because on the hypothesis that Bob robbed the bank.
You know what's amazing? You can change your shirt. Yeah, you can wear 2 shirts. You can put on a different shirt. You don't know how courts work, do you?
The data point that is expected is that Bob would be wearing a red shirt because that would be consistent with the claims of the eyewitnesses. So hopefully you can kind of see the point here. The point here is just to show that evidence isn't conclusive, right? You can have evidence for a theory or a hypothesis without it being true. Now, quickly.
But if you have people that say that they saw something, that's bad, you know, as far as things go. I mean, it's something, but it's not very good. I suppose you can say eyewitness testimony is some level of evidence, but I wouldn't, because it can't be relied upon. But sometimes that's all you have in court. But that's why the apologist goes to court with these analogies, because there you can present eyewitness testimony, but you don't have eyewitness testimony for God itself. So you got nothing.
To zoom in on the here regarding God, one of the points that I made in the last video, so we'll just use this, is this idea of consciousness and how I said consciousness is evidence for God. Now, how is it evidence for God? Well, the reason why consciousness is evidence for God is because it is expected on the hypothesis that God exists, or it is.
Okay, so consciousness is expected on the hypothesis that God exists. What? How? See, this relies upon you assuming that this is true about God already. So that's not then evidence. It's not evidence of God. God could exist in consciousness, could not exist. You know, if that's how God wanted it to be, you know, it's just a nothing statement. That's not evidence for anything. Consciousness is evidence of consciousness and nothing else. It is evidence of itself. But we know what it is. It is a byproduct of the brain that is a emergent property that the brain creates. Some call it an illusion, or a very useful illusion, but illusionary in some ways, because there's not one single part of your brain that's responsible for it. Rather, it's the collective whole. And if your brain gets damaged in some way, shape, or form, then your consciousness will alter. Your persona can alter, and people that know you will notice that. But you from the inside might not notice that. And there's some court case, since we're in court cases, and I'd have to find this if you wanted the citation or whatever, but I recall reading about this, that this guy had gone to jail actually, for looking at illegal images of minors. And he just really enjoyed looking at that, apparently. But while he was in jail, he reported a headache. He went to the doctor, and he said something to the doctor where the doctor's like, okay, we need to give this guy a CAT scan or MRI or whatever. And they looked at his head, and lo and behold, he had a cancerous growth inside of his brain. And it was pushing up against one part of the brain. When they took it out, when they removed it, he no longer wanted to view minor people in this way. He didn't want this. He was repulsed by it, and he couldn't believe that he ever thought that it was good. He's like, no, that's not. And people that had known him had said, no, he never was like that before. But this thing pushed on a part of his brain and made him something he wasn't. That blows away this whole notion that consciousness proves God somehow. Consciousness proves that your brain is doing what what it is. So this is not proof of anything other than you don't know what the hell consciousness is or isn't, and you think that it somehow proves God, which it has no connection to. You still need to demonstrate God.
It's consistent with the hypothesis that God exists. Now, I think this is just self-evidently true, right? But
well, you can think what you want, but you need to demonstrate it.
to try to flesh this out and give a bit better of a justification, let's do that. Well, okay, the reason it's expected or consistent with the hypothesis that God exists is that the claim that theists make is that God is essentially an all-powerful mind, right?
Some theists claim that, but not all theists claim that. But a claim is not relevant to what is real and true. Can you show that there is a mind that is independent of a brain? Because every brain that we know of produces some level of consciousness in various creatures, and some creatures seem to do quite well without any brain. So it seems that there's other ways that a creature can get along without needing a brain, perhaps. I mean, obviously this guy's able to get around just fine without a brain. Not just say, yeah, brain is smooth. Yeah. And so does that prove that God is smooth brained as well? Yes. I mean, obviously, right. So God has a brain. Okay, cool. Where's God's brain located? No. God has a mind. God is a mind. Okay. Couldn't you prove that? No, that's just what we say. That's nice.
And so God would have this experience of being sort of conscious, right? He's a mind.
Okay, so yeah, and that's interesting because now the mind and consciousness therein are said to be an attribute of this thing that has no explanation at all. It is consciousness without a brain, something we've never observed. It is aware. It is a mind without anything to go with it. Apparently, I guess. Do you have any proof of that?
And so if God has this mind, right, conscious experience, then it would follow that this thing is valuable. And so if it's valuable, when God creates a world and he creates...
Why would it be valuable? Where does that come in? That doesn't follow. It's neither valuable nor non-valuable. It's just there. Why are you ascribing meaning to this?
creatures, he's going to create things that have value. And if...
Why would you think that? Why would you assume there's a value judgment at all going on? Maybe it created it because it was bored or lonely. Maybe it created something with consciousness just to mess with it. You don't know.
there's value in having consciousness and or a mind, then we have this expectance that God would give his creatures consciousness.
It's so incoherent as far as an argument goes. So I guess he's just doing this off the cuff, but I'd love to see the syllogism for this.
And so even in this case, it's not even saying that if God exists, he would definitively create creatures with consciousness. No, it's...
So then your argument sucks. So what the heck are you doing here?
It's conceivable that God could create a world where creatures aren't conscious, but it's still consistent, and it's at least expected on the hypothesis that God exists that he would...
How? You haven't demonstrated that at all. But it doesn't matter because you still haven't demonstrated that there's a God in the first place.
Create conscious creatures. And so another secondary point here that I want to make to sort of illustrate the point here is that like the Big Bang Theory, right?
Oh, here we go.
Just the theory that says that the universe began to exist, okay?
Okay, that's not what the Big Bang Theory says. That's not. I know that that's what it seems like it's saying. I know that's what a lot of apologists think that it says, but if you listen to cosmologists, they will explain that no, the Big Bang is not the beginning of the universe. Theory explained. Let's see. It the Big Bang Theory, here's AI overview for what that's worth, everything AI today. Let's see. Explains the universe began as an infinitely small, hot, and dense point. So that's not, it's still this dense point. That's not begin in the same way as you seem to be suggesting. So, yeah. Anyways.
I know typically this is called the Kalam.
Typically it's called the Kalam, which is broken. Yeah.
What we read in Genesis is sort of that God creates the world from nothing, right?
Yeah, and the world wasn't created from nothing. The world, Earth, was a collection of dust left over from after our star, the sun, formed. So there was plenty of stuff that made the world, and God didn't need to do anything because gravity was a thing, and gravity is what pulled all that dust together and elements and whatnot to make, well, not just our planet, but all the planets and gas planets that we have in our solar system. So it wasn't nothing. There was plenty of things. So Genesis is wrong. And since it's wrong, then we should discount it as anything. I don't care what your magic book says. It's wrong. This isn't evidence.
Idea of creation ex nihilo. I know some people would even disagree with that, but just the consistent Christian tradition is that God creates ex nihilo, from nothing.
Yeah. And that's interesting because I'm glad you brought that up. I have a video showing that, atheists don't think the universe came from nothing. I just read somebody saying this again in chat. Oh, we don't, at least we don't think something came from nothing. Did it? Like, we don't know. We don't claim that it came from nothing. Nobody makes that claim except for theists. That God is the only thing that exists. And it creates the universe not from itself, but from nothing. How does it do it? Don't know. Why does it do it? Don't know. It just does somehow. It sounds like magic to me. Do you have any proof of any of this? No, you don't. That's the problem. You have no proof. You have no evidence. Period. Not even a little.
And so this idea of the universe beginning to exist spontaneously is consistent with the claims of Christianity, right?
But we don't have evidence that the universe began spontaneously. Even going with the Big Bang, that singularity, we don't know how long that singularity was a singularity for. It might have always been. In fact, if there's no time, then definitely it's always been until there was time. Because when you don't have time, it's just not time for it to not be time. So that's like forever. That's as much forever as you could get. And our brains have problems processing, at least mine does, the idea of a non-time. But this is not proof of God.
God exists and that he's this all-powerful mind that can do anything. And then
it can do anything except for show up in my live stream. I mean, it can. Apparently, God could show up in my live stream, but it doesn't want to, because why? Well, because God's shy, and God can do anything except for prove that God exists.
Given what our book teaches that God creates out of nothing, this data point would be expected on theism and even.
Okay, so anyways, so God can do anything except for prove that God exists. All us pesky keep asking for proof of God. God itself. Hello. God, prove yourself. Nope. Anyways. Yeah. Okay. So I'm done with this guy. Yeah. So basically, he wants people to stop, atheists to stop saying that there's no evidence for God, because Alex Connor and other philosophers that are atheists are saying that there's evidence of God, but it's not good evidence. I don't care what Alex says. Alex is wrong. If he thinks that there's any evidence of God, Alex is wrong. And he might just be saying that because he waded too deep into the philosophy cuckoo pool. And if other philosophers are saying that, then they're wrong too. And I don't care, because they're not me. There is no evidence for this thing that you label God. There are only bad arguments, and you've demonstrated a couple in your little stream there. In fact, you didn't really even present arguments per se. You just tried to equivocate on what evidence is so that you can excuse yourself from having no evidence. So, yeah, I don't know a single physicist that thinks the universe came from nothing, right? I don't know a single physicist. Yeah. Did I see that he responded to recent criticism? Oh, he did. I made a video about Alex not that long ago, saying that what was that video? Now I don't remember my own video now. I make so much content. I mean, it's good if you like my content. It's bad if you're trying to figure out what the hell I said when. It's not the gobble gobble. I'm a turkey one. Let's see. What was I looking for? Alex O'Connor is more illogical than I thought. That's the name of it. Finally found it. Yeah, shut up, me. Okay, there it is. So yeah. Because he's going off the rails and saying, "Oh, there is evidence for God. It's just not good evidence." I'm like, then it's not evidence. What is this label of good and bad? Where did this come from? I don't know. It's not how I view the world. You either have evidence or you don't. It's not good or bad. It's just there or it isn't there. Okay, so the people saw Bob was wearing a red shirt, but the camera shows he was wearing a blue shirt. Well, people can change shirts, but they did see Bob at the scene of the crime. So we know he was there at least. Whatever shirt he was wearing doesn't really freaking matter. Now, what other evidence do we have about Bob in relation to him robbing this bank? Well, I would assume that we have evidence of some sort of him actually robbing the bank. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the courtroom. So there has to be something more than that. But he doesn't give us that whole story because it's a crappy story that he made up to try to explain away evidence being good or bad or whatever. You either have evidence or you don't. When it comes to this thing that you guys have labeled God, you do not have evidence for the God thing itself. What you have are arguments that you think point to the idea of God that you think is true, which is what he has set up in this video. He said the hypothesis of God, and then the thing matches that hypothesis. Well, you have the hypothesis of a thing that can do anything, then everything would align with that hypothesis. Because however you discover reality to be would align with something that could do anything. There would be nothing that couldn't be done because of this. So there's no way to falsify it. And there's a problem there, I think. A bunch of people criticized Alex. That's why he responded. Yeah, I should watch it. All right. I mean, if pi was an even number, I'd believe. Isn't it? I mean, it's 3.14, but that's not the last number. Actually, do we know what? I guess we don't know the last digit of pi because it goes on forever. Alex O'Connor responds to backlash, I guess. Maybe that's what I'd be looking for. Does anyone know like what the video is called or anything? It probably wasn't even 3. yeah. Does anyone know like the name of the video or name of it? It has no last. Yeah. Yeah, probably is weird. Am I becoming a Christian? Okay. All right. Now, Alex. Am I becoming a Christian? So now I have to relabel this video. So I guess. But yeah, whatever. We'll do it here. I mean, I guess I could start another live stream. But, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do this because you all said I need to, so I'm going to do it.
Just like chill out a little bit, please.
No. 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 I'm not going to chill out.
Alex O'Connor just admitted it. Christianity might actually be true. He debated Christians for years, then admitted this about Jesus. Did Alex O'Connor convert to Christianity? Alex O'Connor is no longer an atheist? Alex O'Connor, no longer an atheist. Here's why. Alex O'Connor, no longer an atheist. Here's why. Part 2. Alex O'Connor just admitted this about Christianity. Did Alex O'Connor change his mind about Christianity? Are you ready to die, cosmic skeptic? Okay, that one actually sounds a bit like a threat, but I'm sure it's driving at the same thing. Okay, so what happened? Something
You didn't show my video, damn it!
super significant must have gone down to cause all of this ruckus. Well, I'll tell you. I recently had a conversation with Bear Grylls in which he asked me where my study of Christianity and theology has led me, and I told him, wait for it, that I think Christianity is more plausibly true than the new atheists do and than I did when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
But you've had such a...
I know. I covered that video. I can't believe it because more plausibly true is incoherent when there's no plausibility there. So I hope you explain yourself. We don't need to recover the Bear Girl. We know what you said there. Okay.
When I was a teenager. And it was actually a clip of this moment which went out on my second YouTube channel that caused all of these responses. I mean, can you believe it? A non-believer in God, like me, is willing to attribute more plausibility to Christianity than someone like Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, no, I do have problems believing it. So please explain yourself.
Or indeed his own teenage self. Can you believe it? I mean, I can't think of a single explanation as to why that would be the case, except that he's secretly on the verge of some kind of grand conversion. No, he's too clever for that. He would never become a Christian. It must be that he's realized Christianity is cool again, and he wants to capitalize on an increased viewership by leaning into Christianity, thereby making a whole lot more money. Okay.
Yeah, that seems plausible to me.
So here's what really happened. If you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you'll know that I'm quite a staunch critic of Christianity and religion and theism in general. And when I was like 17 or 18 and I started making videos, I was a lot more forthright with that atheism. I thought that atheism wasn't just true, but beneficial for society. I thought that religion was harmful. I was really in line with the new atheists like Richard Dawkins and Chris.
The term new atheist already, this is not... I don't know. I don't think we label ourselves in this way. This is something that the theists have tried to label us with. I reject this term. That it's better for society. I don't know. Religion is harmful. That's true.
Christopher Hitchens, who influenced me greatly into a position that religion is just this utterly irrational and evil force in the world. In the past decade, I've come to see this as something of a shallow view. I think it depends.
Well, he started to think it's a shallow view. That's nice. It's not, but whatever.
Depends on the religious tradition, because they're quite different. I think it
Yeah, some religions are better than other. Jainism, which hardly anybody is all about peace and all that. Yeah. Islam's really big, giant problem. Yeah, whatever. But religion in general, broadly speaking, the most amount of it is bad. And even when it isn't bad, it's still a problem because it teaches things that aren't true.
depends on the time in history. I think it depends on the cultural context. And yeah, of course, any historian or sociologist will tell you that it's never as straightforward as I think the new atheists made it out to be. But also on the point of God's, existence, I also think that the new atheists didn't really give enough credence to some of the arguments for the existence of God.
What? Credence to these arguments. Oh, yeah, we just didn't do that enough. What? Are you kidding me? Which arguments for the existence of God are you talking about? Please tell me. Oh, I want to know.
Richard Dawkins, for example, in The God Delusion, spends 2 pages on Thomas Aquinas's famous 5 ways. 2 pages.
Yeah.
And I think in a way that doesn't properly deal with the significance of the arguments that Aquinas was putting forward. Now look.
Oh, 2 pages. That's not enough. How many pages do we need, Alex? More than 2? 3? No, 10, 20? Oh, you didn't cover it well enough. What? All you have to do is point out a single fallacy, and that's it. What are you talking about? What are you talking about, man? Man.
I still don't believe in God. Okay? Like, I just don't think that it's true. But what I will say is that when I was 17 or 18 and I was swept up with this kind of material, I thought that all of the arguments for God's existence were complete nonsense, and that all
They are.
The arguments against God's existence were an epitome of perfect rationality. I've now...
Well, arguments against God, I mean, it depends what God is. That's kind of the response. Their responses more than anything else is how I view it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Depends on which ones you're talking about. Some are sound and some aren't. It just depends.
I'll come to prefer the term agnostic over atheist. I mean, it's a problem.
Okay, I'm done with you. Yeah, okay, he's agnostic now. Whatever, he doesn't know what he is. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. Whatever. Does he ever explain why he thinks these arguments anything? Like, probably not. All right. So I watched it enough. I'm convinced that, like I said in my first video, he's lost the plot, and that's his problem. And whatever, I won't be surprised if and when he does, shift gears and go theology full swing just to get more money. And he says that he doesn't do that in his video. Yeah, sure, that's nice. Don't know if I believe you, but whatever. It seems like to me he's trying to make himself seem smarter than all the other atheists. Like, look, I thought about this harder, and yeah, whatever. Anyways, I don't know. That's it, I guess, for now. And till next time, be skeptical, and after next time, stay skeptical. And thanks for listening. And post a comment on this video, which you won't do, even though I told you to do it. Oh, well. All right.